Before the show begins tonight, please allow me to say several words about the recent events in Vienna. Terrorism is defined as an act of brazen violence that is intended to intimidate civilians for political purposes. Targets of terrorism are unsuspecting civilians going about their daily lives. Terrorists target unsuspecting civilians because terrorists understand that they would be vanquished by those very same civilians in any other circumstances. Indeed, they already have been vanquished, otherwise they would not become terrorists. Let's be clear, terrorists are the definitive losers of all societies. They are weak, fragile individuals who have never met with success and who showcase their own worthlessness to the world through their own personal debasement. If, during the course of their own personal debasement, terrorists invoke holy names, those utterances should be construed as clear and present rebukes against the very violence that the terrorists plan and perpetrate. So rather than identifying them as fanatics, be they religious or otherwise, terrorists should be called out by their true names: pathetic criminals, the desperate losers of the game of life, and the disgrace of all that is courageous, that is right, that is just, that is holy. And by the way, terrorists always fail miserably at what would be their life's last will and testament. We, civilians, will not be intimidated. Today, our thoughts are with our fellow women and men who endure life's slings and arrows with patience and grace. Though unsung, they are life's truest heroines and heroes. Let us take comfort, inspiration, and guidance from their example. Their quiet bravery conquers all ills and leads all of us toward the right, the just, and yes, even the holy. The values shared among those of us gathered here tonight drive us to pursue ever greater understanding of each other. We value and honor the uniqueness of each other. We believe in each other's inevitable triumph in life. And we cherish the promise of our friendship. Many of us are based in Vienna and have chosen to raise our families here. Our Vienna, indeed, our world, is defined by those magnificent, life-affirming values. That being said, let the show go on. Tonight, our featured guest is Simone Kopmeyer, an internationally acclaimed jazz singer and songwriter. Simone, welcome.
Nice being here.
Tell us a
Thanks.
little bit about your first encounters with music.
I grew up in a musical family,
What kind of music was it that you were playing?
hearing not just jazz and not just folk music.
Good. So this sounds like a good time to talk to Dr. Bob.
Started with classical music. I got into jazz.
And I just wanted to check in with Professor Lino Rivera.
I was trained as a classical musician.
Tell us about how you decided to make this album.
I'm working with John for many, many years.
And John, this Christmas album, what does this mean to you?
It was a lot of fun.
So I believe we have now a special guest. Juan Carlos is back. Hi.
Well, hello, everybody.
Carlos, I understand that we are able to offer this coffee.
Exactly. So you can pre-order the coffee.
Goodbye. See you next week. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by UR Music and Arts and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please turn off your camera and microphone and or go to the Facebook Live video feed, the link to which has been placed in the chat room. For a better experience, please turn off your microphone and set your video to gallery view. and enjoy a cup of UR Music and Arts signature Il Tenore Colombian coffee. Tonight, our featured guest is the ZOFO Duet, a Grammy-nominated piano duo comprised of pianists Eva-Maria and Keisuke Nakagoshi. Dr. Robert Greenberg also joins us tonight. He is a composer, music historian, pianist, and since 1993, the #1 best-selling professor of courses made by the teaching company. Professor Niels Moos, director of the Opera Master's Program of the Music and Arts University of the City of Vienna, and Professor Lino Rivera of St. Mary's College of California also join us. Welcome, Eva. Welcome, Keisuke. Keisuke, so I've never seen such beautiful choreography on the piano. How, as both accomplished professional pianists, why is it that you spent the last 10 years working together on one piano instead of on two?
Well, one of the reason was a practical reason, because we don't live together and we both have only one piano at home. And we finding the venue with two equal piano is very hard. Well, let's talk positive. We really both got fascinated by the literature of one piano full hand, and it's such a unique form of chamber music that we share a one single instrument. And the piano is very interesting that the pianists are very used to play and then just make sound by oneself, and having two-person play on same instrument. Technically, you can't hear who's playing what, and that's really interesting. And a lot of times that when I play very notey music, the music that has many notes, and I wish so many times that I have more hands and more fingers, and there we are.
What exactly is the difference, if you would tell us, somebody who's not a pianist, what's the difference between playing with another pianist who's on another piano, so two pianos, and playing piano four hands?
Well, we have to work a lot with the choreography because we share the same bench, we share the same keyboard. Sometimes we share the keys not only this way, but also this way. So we have to layer our hands. We'll get to that later in this program. And we just both love to work with choreography, just using our bodies to make it work. It's kind of like a figure skating. So if one person does something a little bit different, it can just kind of throw off the whole thing. It's kind of how then after 10 years we kind of do things we probably are not even aware of to just kind of adjust each other.
Do you think that you two are naturally inclined to play together or to play this kind of chamber music? Or because most pianists I know, they are very particular about their piano, about doing everything exactly the way that they want to do it. Does it take a very special kind of pianist to play piano four hands?
Well, I think one has to be very tolerant. And well, at the beginning of our duo career, like 10 years ago, of course, we were very polite to each other, and very not try to be too territorial on the keyboards. But after 10 years, like that, we took off the boundary and we just kind of be aggressive to each other, and that actually works well on especially the one piano forehand, because you can't really be hesitant because you gotta kind of keep going.
So you can't have permission from the other person to use a certain key. You just have to take it yourself.
Exactly.
Understood. And so, Keisuke, why is it that you are seated to the left of Eva? What does that mean?
It doesn't mean much. It just we try to switch, and that's another interesting thing about the one piano forehand, that it's a chamber music that the role can be switched, as opposed to a different form of chamber music. You can't really switch. So it just happened to be this formation on this program today that I'm sitting on the bottom, the piano, and then she's playing the top of the part. But in actual concerts, we actually mix it quite equally.
And so, but for those of us who are not really familiar with the piano, what does it mean when you're seated down on the left-hand side?
If you think about the orchestra, I'm the double bass or the contra bassoon, and that has the very low sound. The instruments that
A little bit for us?
like that. And then oftentimes the bottom part, who plays the bottom part, takes care of the pedal also on the piano.
Could you maybe play for us some, just a few little bits of what is normal to play down there when you're on the left-hand side?
So like.
That sounds pretty nice, but you don't get jealous when he gets to play that nice stuff?
Well, I get my turn later on. When we switch, I get to play the bass.
So what is it that you get to play on the right-hand side?
So in these pieces we will play today, I'm gonna play more the high instruments of like flute, oboe, the strings, the violins, piccolo, and so. But once in a while, it's well, we'll get to that later when we talk about the Beethoven.
Can you play maybe just a little bit for us?
The Beethoven.
Some examples?
So it's kind of just the high notes. Yeah.
Okay. And so it's not that you always sit to Keisuke's right or he always sits to your left. You like to both switch around.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a very different hearing experience. When I play the top, it's much harder for me to hear the piece as a whole. And when I play the bottom part, my ear always wants to go to the top naturally. So, but I know the bottom part well because I've practiced it. Then my ear goes to the top. Then I have more of a whole experience.
Understood. So tell us, and maybe you could get ready to play some music for us. I understand that you have prepared a concert of Beethoven's Symphony for four-hand piano. So in this concert, it is going to take place at the Library of Congress in Washington. What can you play a little bit for us, and can you tell us about putting together this concert?
Sure. Before we play, maybe let me tell you what the sample will be. We start with the third movement, which is a scene in the countryside. It's actually the whole symphony is called Pastoral. So it's a kind of a day trip into the countryside by city people. And in that third movement that we're going to play, there's a village band playing, then being interrupted by a thunderstorm, which goes into the fourth movement. So we will play that excerpt.
And this was originally for orchestra.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay. Wow, very nice. I'd like to talk to, we have a distinguished conductor here, Professor Niels Moos. I'm wondering if he would tell us his thoughts.
Yes, hello, and do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Of course, I'm also sitting in Vienna, and we have all been through this terrible terror attack, as you have mentioned, and we are very happy that we live in this country that had such a rich cultural heritage that binds us all together. And of course, Beethoven also a very important part of that. I'm so happy to hear these things played on four-hand piano. I myself, when I was young, I was part of a piano duo also, so I know all repertoire. But I think that people have to imagine at Beethoven's times and after, this music was actually only known as four-hand piano. It was very, very seldom to go to an orchestra concert. That was almost impossible. So this music was written for four-hand piano, so everyone could be acquainted with this wonderful music. And in Vienna at that time, there was around, I think, 120 piano manufacturing companies, because everyone played piano at that time. And everyone had these Beethoven symphonies and whatever, Mozart overtures and all these things. That is I think it's a very important part of every pianist's upbringing, also a conductor's upbringing.
May I barge in there? Because I think Niels just brought up something that's super important. And that is, in the 19th century, everything that was written, whether it was for orchestra, string quartet, concerti, everything was arranged for piano four hands, because it was the only way you could hear and know this stuff without going to a concert. And concerts, of course, were not recorded and they were not readily available all over the place. Years might go by in a city between performances of a given Beethoven symphony, and then a very few people could get in and hear it. And so it was through the piano four-hand publishing companies, which were huge. I mean, it was by far the biggest era of the biggest part of music publishing. It was through piano four hands that people got to know this music, they got to play the music, and they got to study the music. And there were countless editions of the same pieces competing with each other, which is a question that I've got for Eva-Maria and Keisuke. That is, whose four-hand arrangement are you doing? Do you know who created this and when it was created?
This arrangement is done by Carl Czerny, who was also a student of Beethoven's. And I think it was created just a few years after Beethoven actually finished the piece.
Czerny's arrangement would have been then from about 1810 or 1811. The piece was premiered in 1808. So there you have it, and Czerny was a student of Beethoven, and also, I mean, his opus numbers go into to the fourth power. There's so darn many of them. So this would be a piece, this would be an arrangement that Beethoven himself would have sanctioned and would have approved of. And I think that's really cool, and that's great to hear. One more thing I would add before we go on, because I don't want to leave it unsaid. Two phrases were used early on that were great phrases: choreography and figure skating, couples figure skating. There's no musical genre quite like piano four hands, because it's the only musical genre that requires that performers be in physical contact with each other all the time. In the 19th century, by the way, this could be very controversial. It was one of the few ways unmarried people, men and women, could touch each other in public and not create a scandal. Although sometimes the scandal was created anyway. Your hips are touching each other. That's the bottom half of our bodies. It's the fun half. It's the half that can get us to do bad things. So in any case, the physicality of piano four hands is absolutely unique in the world of music. And it's something that some composers, and that's the other point I wanted to bring up, and then I will stop. There are really two big bodies of four-hand piano music. There's music written just for piano four hands, but then there's all of these transcriptions, all of these arrangements. And that's why Keisuke and Eva-Maria were talking about contrabassoon and the bass versus violins and flutes, because when playing the Beethoven, this is an arrangement of an orchestral work, and they have to be aware of what instruments would have been playing this, because that's part of their interpretation. Whereas if a composer writes directly for four hands, it's not conceived orchestrally, it's conceived very differently. So it's a fascinating and really unique musical combination. And by the way, we're watching the best of the best.
So Eva and Keisuke, how is it that you decided to play this music actually?
We were asked to, and we said yes. It's not usually something we would do. Like we're not Beethoven specialists, but we like to play everything. We mostly we play 20th century music, but we're not focused on that. We love to play whatever comes, our way. We will play.
Seems to me that this Beethoven symphony brings with it its own challenges because there's a lot of playing together, just like an orchestra would under a conductor. There's not that choreography, a different kind of choreography. So you're playing all of those notes together. Has it been challenging for you to switch gears and play a symphony?
I think it's fun for us to be the orchestra and the conductor at the same time. Who gets to be a conductor who who is not trained as conductors? So we kind of feel like we can also be our conductors. And as far as the challenges, I think we could try to really bring out this oboe line or bring out this double bass line, and we do compare the scores. But in my experience of playing other symphonies in the past is that people who know the piece well, they will say, "Oh, I heard this, I heard that," and their ears are doing the work for them. They hear the instruments in the piano part. And people who don't know the piece, they will hear a piano piece. So my goal or our goal is that we just try to have this openness that an orchestra has, this vast body of sound, and this, when you watch the conductors, there's so much, they're just bathing in the music. It seems sometimes they're just in the middle of it and immersed. That's my goal, to really have this wide open feel.
Understood. So Niels has a comment or a question?
Yes, no, it is wonderful. Everything is wonderful to hear. I think there's a funny story. You asked about who's playing the left and who's playing the right. Of course, the left hand can easily drown out the right person who's playing the upper part. And of course, there was a very famous on some occasions four-hand piano concert with Frédéric Chopin and Franz Liszt. And Chopin said always, I am playing the left hand, also the left side, the bass side, because that guy Liszt is not going to drown me out.
I have a burning question for Keisuke and Eva-Maria, if I may.
Professor Rivera.
Okay, Keisuke and Eva-Maria. Piano transcriptions are actually a very deep fascination for me. As a matter of fact, in my doctoral dissertation, I performed 3 recitals of pure transcriptions on piano. I performed the Beethoven 9th Symphony transcription of Liszt and the Liszt transcription of the Berlioz Symphonie Fantastique.
Wow.
When I played this in concerts, the comments of the audience to me was, well, this has its time. These transcriptions had its own time when we are not exposed to recordings of orchestras. I was wondering what your comment would be to that particular comment of audience members, wherein piano transcriptions had its time. It's obsolete. There's no more. It's not necessary anymore in our modern times.
What I've heard from people hearing us, for example, play the Rite of Spring, that is that they said, never mind, all the orchestra sounds are lost, but we could hear the piece like a skeleton. We got it. It's kind of like taking away things that makes then the kind of the core of the music come out for some. So I think that's a nice way to see it, that it gets stripped, but at the same time you see exactly how the skeleton is working.
The comments I usually get is of course, that we can't be exactly like an orchestra. I mean, the great thing about orchestra is it has so many colors, and it's just a different mood. And then we are not trying to be exactly like that because there's no chance that we beat them. And but it has its own advantage. That the comments that I usually get is there's so much more rhythmic integrity that they can hear a clearer rhythm as opposed to the orchestra. And it's just a different perspective. And then, like what she said, that it's almost like going through a composer's blueprints. That what I mean, it's not always the case that a composer write on piano first and then they orchestrate it, or the other way around. But it's just a kind of different way of looking the piece, and I think it's fascinating as it is. And by the way, ZOFO, ZOFO, is an abbreviation of 20-finger orchestra. So we changed to 20 to ZO, so we can pronounce as ZOFO. So I personally love playing the piano transcription of the arrangement of the orchestra pieces. That it just, like I said, it's a different angle of looking at the piece, and it's really fascinating.
If I might just reinforce what you guys just said, because I think it's right on the button. Lino, I'm shocked that an audience member would say that, because those Liszt transcriptions, I think the Liszt Beethoven transcriptions are the greatest single set of piano transcriptions ever done by anyone, anytime. I mean, they're brilliant the way they use the piano, but more than that, they're brilliant the way they expose the core of what Beethoven was doing. And the beauty of it is you hear everything. You hear every line, you hear every part, you hear every harmonic change. And that's the beauty of the timbre of the piano, is that nothing is drowned out if the pianist is good enough to play all the individual parts. I love listening to the Liszt transcriptions, and I'm really enjoying the Czerny, which I now have to seek out because I've never heard recordings of the Czerny. I'm hearing all kinds of things that we simply don't hear in an orchestral performance. Skeleton, blueprint, both of those terms are beautiful because we're hearing the core of the structure and every individual part. It might not be as colorful, but for me, it's actually, it's more fascinating because it's as if we're following Beethoven's train of thought.
Wonderful. Let's take a look quickly now at the invitation to the concert, the digital concert at the Library of Congress. loc.gov/concert/ZOFO. We have the virtual program, and I believe, if I'm correct, that people can register or they have to pay to come to this concert. Is that right?
I'm not completely sure. I think it's free, but I haven't looked into how to, use all the tech that's involved with it.
Understood. Okay. So then, anyways, it says register on Eventbrite, and it is going to be Thursday, December 10th. So a virtual concert available to everybody, possibly, most likely free, I imagine. And again, the link will be placed in the chat room for anybody. loc.gov/concerts/ZOFO. Perfect. So I'm wondering if we could more of the Beethoven Symphony.
Sure. We're going to play more of the Storm, and then we go into the fifth movement that is a little bit that shows gratitude that the storm wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Lovely. So let's move on now to your other activities, which are commissioning and arranging music. What does it mean when you arrange music for piano for hand?
I let Keisuke talk because he's usually the one who arranges things for us. So what does it mean?
What does it mean? It's exploring the core of the music. It's just like I say, it's a different angle, looking at the piece in different angle, and then finding a lot of new stuff or the different stuff that you don't usually hear.
And so is that what you just played by Beethoven, an arrangement or a transcription?
That's a very interesting question, because what's the definition of arrangement and the transcription? For me, the transcription is exactly what was the original music was, and then just transferred to this instrument instead of adding new idea or the changing up the original. And I call that the changing up or adding new material is arrangement.
Okay, so we have here, I believe it's ZOFO Mama that we're about to see. What is it that we're going to watch on this video?
This was a project we started about 4 years ago and finished maybe 2 years ago. We had the idea that we wanted to do our own pictures of an exhibition. Some of you might know that famous piece by Mussorgsky, Pictures at an Exhibition. He wrote pieces inspired by paintings. So we picked 15 composers from around the world to be part of this project, and they picked a painter or a painting from their own culture or country and let themselves be inspired by it and wrote us a piece. And Keisuke wrote the introduction and the promenades that will connect one painting and its musical counterpart to the other. So based on Mussorgsky's famous promenade theme.
It's the So that's the promenade music. So as if you are in museum looking at paintings, and Mussorgsky puts this melody of interlude between the pieces that got inspired by painting, as if you're walking in the museum through one painting to the other. And I arranged this promenade in my own way. I use the term arrangement because I did whatever I wanted to do with it. So we tied those 15 pieces from different composers together as a one program.
Fantastic, let's take a look at it. So Bob, music and painting together, is that abnormal? Is that abnormal or is that the normal?
There's no normal. It's just what it is. You know, composers take their inspiration from wherever they can find it. And we're visual animals more than anything else. And what we see, we want to find ways to describe. It's hard to describe anything that's visual or oral with words. But describing something visual with music, I think, is very effective because you're hearing an interpretation of an image, not a depiction of an image. And so this happens all the time. I think composers are constantly inspired by visual impetus, whether they admit to that or not.
So Eva and Keisuke, will you be performing this at any time in the future, or is this something that was recorded and then you're all through with it?
No. We had more performances lined up, but they all got cancelled, of course, because of the pandemic. But we will record this in front of green screen, just as we did the Beethoven, and it will be projected as hologram the same way as the Beethoven for those concerts who have been cancelled. So they will still happen in that way.
Wonderful. I look forward to getting information about those performances. And so the next video, we have Tupan and Davul. Can you tell us about that?
It's our latest commission that we premiered last summer, and it's by Erberk Erilmaz. He's a Turkish composer, or Turkish American, and Tupan and Davul are a Bulgarian and Turkish drum. So he took his inspirations from those two different instruments than the piano and their rhythms, so folk rhythms. And yeah, it was just really interesting for us to dive into those uneven rhythms. And it was fantastic, really great to see him play for us, that he really, you know, has those uneven rhythms in his body. And then we have to learn it and make it look like we grew up with this.
Fantastic. Let's take a look. So I take it that's a duet that's not safe for children under the age of 12.
It might be hard for them to reach into the piano, depending on
Wow, it sounds fantastic. I never heard the piano that way. Wow.
That was the old first. That was the old first concert, wasn't it? Yeah, I was there. It was great.
Fantastic. And so I'd like to remind everybody, if you have a question, anybody who's around, just chime in, turn on your microphone, write a post on the chat or from Facebook, just write in the chat. We look forward to having your questions and comments. Eva and Keisuke are here to answer your questions, hear your comments. Good. So now the last piece we have here is G Song by Terry Riley, arranged by Keisuke. Tell us about that.
Well, about a few years ago, we had the CD recording project, our fourth album. We decided to do all the piano forehand music by Terry Riley because he has this suite of piano forehand music that was about 45 minutes, and it was not quite long enough for one album. So we decided to have his music somehow arranged to one piano forehand. And we got in touch with Terry, and he had his own suggestions. And I went through his own music, and then I picked G Song for us to play. When I heard the music, I immediately fell in love with the piece. And it's sort of a chaconne, which is let's say a variation. It's about 8 bars that repeats the same chord progression, repeats over and over. And
I think one of the challenges for Keisuke was to arrange something that was written for string quartet to piano forehands. The string quartet, the instruments can cross, the cello can do a scale up while the viola does something in the middle, and the violins go down or something. They can cross and up and down and don't bother each other. But if we want to cross lines, there's just a physical limit to that. So
much harder than playing their own instruments.
So we started just like, working with layering the hands, sometimes three hands on top of each other, using the key all the way to the board here. And also, Keisuke, actually, you composed some stuff where it was just impossible. You composed a little bit something that's more spread out on the piano, and Terry Riley said, yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So this is something that I got carried away by arranging it. First, I was going to transcribe it as exactly put the same notes to the piano, but then as I was doing it, I got too excited, and then I wanted to put more, my own ideas, and luckily Terry gave us a permission, and he liked the transcription. So.
And what did he say when you told him? If I understand correct, you approached him about making this arrangement?
He liked it.
Mm-hmm.
He says, his music is not just like set in stone. He's an improviser. So he takes that one idea and just does it in multiple ways. So this is totally down his alley. And, he heard us perform before, before we recorded. So he said, that's fine.
And in the process of arranging it, I went the music with him back and forth. So I just made sure that it's not something that he's not happy with.
So let's hear some, please.
So this is the first 2 pages of the G Song, which was originally for string quartet.
Written for the Kronos string quartet.
Beautiful. So it has a very contemporary kind of popular music feel. How do you how do you relate to this music?
It has the sort of a jazzy feeling too, and like you said, like a little pop music also. But at the same time, it has this sort of Baroque or the Renaissance, like very old music, and it's just very attractive to hear all sound style of music kind of mixed together.
And Keisuke, if you would pick kind of your favorite passage or something that really fascinates you, would you play it for us if you know what that is?
I'm sorry.
Your favorite spot in it?
Oh, that's when I finally get to the melody. So, yeah, when she's working very hard underneath my hand, and I just get to sing the very nice melody on top of it, which is
Mhm.
great.
And could you play that for us, Ava?
Oh, my part?
Mhm.
I'm like, wait. And then finally I'm free.
Fantastic. That's lovely. Well, I'm sure that all of us want to know how to stay in touch with you. So let's take a look at your website, zofoduet.com. And so it's here, Ava and Keisuke, that we can contact you directly. Is that possible? Is that okay if people contact you directly?
I think it will go to our management, but they will forward it to us. So yes.
Understood. Okay. There it is. Artists. Okay. Uh-huh. Perfect. And that also, your website has all the information like upcoming concerts. Is that right?
Well, it needs to be updated, which means
Yes.
everything needs to be canceled.
Okay, understood. Understood. Okay, very good. So, anyways, we have website there, zofoduet.com, and you can reach out to Ava and Keisuke through their management there. And there we have.
And Simeon, if I may, this just make sure these guys have made some phenomenal CDs, and I should have them sitting here so I can show everybody, but I don't have them with me. But let's make sure that everyone knows that if they put in ZOFO on Amazon or wherever you want them to be bought, there's just extraordinary recordings, fantastic recordings.
Wonderful. And there we have in the chat room all of the pages we just saw, zofoduet.com, facebook.com/zofoduet, and YouTube. Wonderful. So there we have it. So thank you so much, Ava and Keisuke. Thank you for sharing with us Keisuke's home, piano, and your fantastic artistry. We look forward to your concert at the Library of Congress.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
So coming up next Wednesday, November 11th, the Ariana String Quartet, Beethoven's String Quartets is the title of the program. The string quartet is one of the most enduring genres of classical music. Why is that? And why is the string quartet still so popular among today's audiences? Like cellist Alexander Sandy Walsh-Wilson explained to us, the string quartet is an institution. The string quartet is at once a musical document, a set of finely crafted musical instruments, that is, 2 violins, 1 viola, and 1 cello. And today, it's 4 highly specialized professional musicians who spend the lion's share of their time in each other's company. The Ariana String Quartet may be an archetype of that institution. Since 1992, its musicians, violinist John Migroso, Julia Sakharova, violist Johanna Mendoza, and cellist Kurt Baldwin, have dedicated their professional lives to performing together the string quartet's instruments and repertoire at the highest level of artistry. Not surprisingly, they have been met with great international acclaim. Come welcome the Ariana String Quartet and find out what its members' lives and daily rhythms are like. Ludwig van B is sure to make a quartet guest appearance. So that's next Wednesday, November 11th. Look forward to seeing you there. So last thing I'd like to bring to your attention is an update on our UR Music and Arts website called The Coffee Experience in connection with our coffee that we are bringing from Juan Carlos Echeverry's family coffee farm. So this this web page, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get it up there. Hopefully we will. Allows people to take a look at the product we're going to be offering. There it is. There's a coffee experience. And so all you have to do, if you're interested in knowing more about this coffee that we will be selling very shortly, in order to finance our activities, is click interest. So if you click that interest button there, it's going to connect you to a form that will allow you to get on a mailing list. And there it is. You can see there, €15 is Penore Coffee pre-order. So all you do is put your name and your email address, and we will get back to you in the coming weeks about and to inform you how you make an order if you so wish. So anyways, so take a look if you have a chance. Go to our Music and Arts web page, go under Shopping Experience, and we would very, very much like to have you register so that we can give you some information about how to order this coffee. So thank you very much to Eva and Keisuke. Thank you to Dr. Bob, Professor Lino Rivera, Professor Niels Moos, to our superhero production team, and of course, most of all, to you, our participants, without whom our Wednesday reunion would not be worth it. So from Vienna, Austria, from the Bay Area, California, and the Echeverry Coffee Farm near the city of Pereira, Colombia, good night, goodbye, and see you next week.
After the coffee has been washed and a bit fermented, we put it under the sun so that it gets dried. It takes around 5 days to 1 week. It depends of the sun and of the weather. Then we can take the last layer and the coffee will be ready to get roasted. The coffee has to be flipped every 2 hours, and so that it gets dried properly. Here you have my father doing that. We've been here since 7 months, all the time, because of the pandemic, and he loves taking care of his good coffee.